Guest speaker. It's kind of unique for us in this program because she's a girl. And that's a good thing. Her name's Tina Workman. I've known her for hundreds of years, it seemed like. Her parents used to have a little restaurant down the road. I knew it as a 2nd Street coffee shop for years, and I had a music store kind of across the street. So I'd call over and ask her if she could, run something over. And I'd always give her a hard time, but that was just my nature, so. But she'd always come over and give me a hard time, but she's a member of some of the local organizations. But today, she's going to be our guest speaker. And like I say, from a unique point of view, you, being a lady and a Navy retiree, with her husband, Terry Wickman, who's going to come up here and just, well, knowing her, I don't know what she's going to say, but keep it civilized, that's all I ask. But Tina and Terry, would you come out and give us a wonderful presentation?
Yeah, Fred would call and have me bring food over to him. And I'll let your imaginations wander. There were free guitar lessons offered too. So we'll just leave that there. First of all, I'd like to say happy birthday to all the Marines out there. There we go. I may tease the branches, every one of them, but I have the utmost respect for every military member, every veteran, past, present, and future. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stop teasing you, Elmer. I will continue to do so. All right. Terry?
20 years ago today, I joined the U.S. Navy Reserve Seabees as a builder 2nd class officer.
Petty officer.
Sorry. I am enlisted aboard the USS Lexington on the flight deck. Tina and I had been married 9 years, and we had 3 children, ages 13, 10, and 4. When I went to New Orleans for boot camp. The first unit that I was attached to was Corey Station in Pensacola, Florida. Tina had been in the Navy 5 years at this point. Before the end of the career, I will have transferred units several times following her. Every time Tina transferred, so did I. We spent time apart due to Tina's transfer before the end of the school year and not wanting to take the kids out of the school early. I learned new and exciting things every unit. I made lifelong friends along the way.
I joined the Navy when I was 24 years old. On the 21st of October 1986. Reagan was president. There was a recession. We had been married for 4 years. I don't do anything normal. I do everything backwards. Terry had a son from a previous marriage, Josh, who lived with his mother. And I had a daughter, Jackie, who was with us. Josh was 8 and Jackie was 5. I may have these ages wrong. It's been a long time ago. Due to the recession, Terry had gotten laid off from Thatcher Glass, and he was having trouble finding a decent job. I was working 3 days a week for Dr. Ibanez and bringing in $96 a week. So we were robbing Peter to pay Paul every month. I made a drastic decision. I was going to join the National Guard, but I couldn't find the phone number. So I ended up getting a hold of the Army recruiter, who I set an appointment up with. Went down for the appointment. He was late. And the Navy recruiter was right across the hall. Not missing an opportunity, he came out, started talking to me, and poached me. I did talk to all the other branches to try and ensure that I made a somewhat educated decision on what I was doing, except for the Air Force, because they were never in the office. Unfortunately, that's the truth, Elmer. After about 3 months, I signed the papers to join the delayed entry program. Raised my right hand, said the oath, the same oath that I would take again 5 months later. But 5 months later in October, that oath was followed by paperwork in the form of a legal binding contract that made me a part of the United States Navy. That began the adventure of a lifetime. But I was in no way prepared in any way, shape, or form for what was to come. Believe it or not, I left Aurora a rather naive young lady. Luckily, I was open-minded and willing to bend and change. I went to boot camp and apprenticeship training in Orlando, Florida from October of '86 through January of '87. Then I came back to Indiana for about a week or two, grabbed my little family and our meager possessions, and we moved to Jacksonville, Florida for my first command.
I was ready for a new adventure. I was happy to have Tina back with me, except about to move. Excited about the move, sorry. We moved into an apartment, and I had a job working in construction in the other side of the city within a few weeks. Tina was stationed at VA 174 Naval Air Station Cecil Field, and I was working at Ponderosa Beach. Miles and miles apart, only one car. I would take Tina to the base and pick her up. She would be about an hour early and would wait up to 2 hours for me to pick her up. Now she's late for everything. Did I mention that the good majority of the time that she was very, very pregnant?
So I was able to spend a lot of time on base, and I had the opportunity to observe and learn at my first command. Became apparent early on that the Navy was a good old boy organization. Just let me assure everyone, I'm not going to paint this as being sunshine and roses throughout my whole career. I'm going to tell you exactly what it was like. And being a female in the military is way different than being a male in the military. The sexual harassment started almost immediately. It was the late 80s, before tailhook, before all the political correctness. I was sexually harassed at least 6 times between the pay grades of E1 to E4. In addition to that, I gained a 6-year stalker, which the command insinuated was my fault. Reporting these types of things back then was taboo. If a female reported sexual harassment, it would follow you to every command, and it would make life difficult for you. So we didn't report it. 90% of us didn't report it. There's been many changes for women during my career and since. Many positive changes. It got to a point later on that we could report this stuff and not be ridiculed for the rest of our career. But, you know, when you learn one way, the first few commands, you just stick with it. Men could speak their opinions to their superiors with no repercussions. A woman, on the other hand, now this was up until I got out, not so much. But I learned very quickly how to speak my mind tactfully without being written up. Of course, it always shows on your evals eventually. From Jacksonville, I went to Naval Air Station Pensacola. I left in February unaccompanied because the kids were in school until the end of May. It seemed that being an unaccompanied female, some of the male sailors thought that I was fair game, such as my supervisor. He learned rather slowly, because he was kind of dense, that I was not on the market. During this time, Desert Storm began, and I learned they had a need for a yeoman second class in Bahrain. So I put in a request to go over. Well, it was shot down. So being persistent, I put in another request to go over. Well, it was shot down. So being aggravated, I put in a third request, and I walked it through. Well, the commander, the lieutenant commander, who was the second in charge of our department, informed me that he was going to disapprove it, and so would his supervisor. He would disapprove it, which meant the commanding officer would disapprove it. And his exact words were, "Go back to your desk and get to work." So at that point, I had to concede defeat, and I asked him, is it because I'm a female? And he kind of hum-hawed around and said no, but I don't believe he might think it was because I was a female. Terry and the girls moved to Pensacola in June. Terry took a few months off. He played on the beach with the girls because we had inadequate housing that was 2 miles from the beach. And he began working in a print shop around mid-August. Then in November 1991, he did the same thing to me that I did to him. It was surprise, hey, guess what? I joined the reserves. And shortly after that, he got a position at the Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department at Quarry Station.
Her request is going overseas worried me. I was scared. Not knowing what I would do, I couldn't understand why she would volunteer to do such a thing.
From Pensacola, we transferred to Everett, Washington, 94 to 97, then Cincinnati, Ohio, 97 to 01. Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, 01 to 04, and Willow Grove was our next major event. I had 5 years left in my career before I retired from active duty, so I went unaccompanied again to Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base Willow Grove at the end of January until July of 2001. Found a little condo, and in July, I brought my 13-year-old daughter to Pennsylvania to be with me while I finished my career. Terry stayed behind because he was working at Batesville Casket, and we didn't want him to have to switch jobs again. And Pennsylvania has better schools, than this area, so I wanted her to have a good education. Did I mention the 13-year-old angry daughter? The very, very, oh so angry daughter? Yeah, that was Joy. I was assigned to the base commanding officer's admin office. I worked directly for the base commanding officer, the executive officer, the command master chief. It was during this time that a plan was hatched, developed by the base XO, the lead civilian in the reserve center on base, and myself to have Terry recalled to active duty. This was post 9/11.
Tina told me the plan, and I went along with it. I transferred from MMC 1 in Cincinnati to the Keppel Iceland unit in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, where I did a few months of weekend drills, taking the military flights over. Then I was recalled to active duty on February of 02. I was assigned to security department in Willow Grove. I was full-time security, and Tina was part-time auxiliary security force.
It wasn't unusual for Terry and I to have duty on the same day. I know that sounds weird to some of you. We could not be on gate duty together. We could not be patrolling at the same time, and we could not in any way, shape, or form ever be in a patrol vehicle together. I'm not sure why. I lost my thought. And this would last for 18 months.
Not only did I perform duties and security, but BU-2 Warbach and I built evidence cage, weapons cage, and 2 officer spaces in the guard shed.
So not only did they make him arm up and patrol, but in addition to that, they made him and Warbach, who also was in security, build for them too. They figured they had free help. They were rather frightening times, being post 9/11. The security threat level would change daily, and you never knew who would be in the next vehicle or in the back of the next work van. Security was fun and scary all at the same time, especially with both of us on the force. But we're pretty strong-willed and pretty optimistic. Terry's active duty ended in November 2003. He continued to drill with Willow Grove and did several large jobs, saving the base over $100,000. I transferred for the last time in 2004 to Reading, Pennsylvania. Terry was able to do 3 months worth of drills at one time. So he was able to come over to Willow Grove for a week at a time and spend that week with us and do his drills at that time. My last 4 months in the military I was loaned out to another reserve center to fill a gap when the yeoman transferred. I had to fix the admin office because it was pretty messed up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and both departments were getting ready for a triennial inspection. Somehow I managed to pass both inspections, and it might have been because I came into both commands during the inspections in uniform, even though I was on terminal leave. And yes, I knew it was a suck-up, but it worked. I was the only department to pass in Allentown, so whatever it takes. We managed to survive 20 years of active duty and 20 and a half years of reserve duty. Terry retired from the reserves in 2012. Our girls were Navy brats, transferring schools every time we transferred duty stations, sometimes transferring schools more than once in one area due to moving from one apartment to another. But our kids were troopers. They didn't complain very much. I'm not saying that everything was perfect. We had issues. But the girls got to ride in a bass boat with about 6 dolphins swimming around us. They got to walk on a glacier. They got to climb a mountain. They got to ski on a mountain. And they met people from all around the world. Our youngest daughter, Nicole, graduated high school in May of '06 with literally 999 other students in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. By this time, we had 6 grandkids, and I retired in '06.
I would stay at Willow Grove for another 6 months, at which time I transferred to MMCB 26 Cincinnati, where I promptly selected to go to Iraq in June of '08. You would think, being a CV, I would be able to build things in Iraq, which I did. I built SWA huts, but I also was assigned to several convoys. As a matter of fact, my partner, BU-1 Castle, and I made up signs to put on the trucks, 2 men in a truck. The sandstorms were awful. They were thick. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. We had to drive in these storms, which were difficult at best. I left Iraq in September of '08. It was '09. Returned to March in '09, which was torn rotator cuff. I would end up being assigned to Naval Station Norfolk, Virginia, until the 2010 after my surgery and physical therapy. My career took me to Rhodes, Spain, Guam twice, Puerto Rico, Hawaii twice, and I learned a lot about locations, culture, and food. I had enjoyed my career very much. The only regret is not doing it sooner. Upon return to Cincinnati, I stayed in reserves until I retired. Was approved in July of 2012.
My primary function in the military, when I went in, was active duty only. And then I had someone talk me into going full-time support, which somebody has to be there full-time to take care of the reservists. And they told me that I would homestead and I would never have to leave Jacksonville. Well, obviously they lied, because I transferred every 3 years. But this presented a special set of circumstances for Terry and I, because like when we were stationed in Cincinnati, I worked in training. I wrote orders. There was no way I was going to write him a set of orders to Guam or Hawaii and then have other reservists come up and say, oh, he's getting special treatment. So I would make somebody else write his orders. I wouldn't touch his service record. I didn't want anyone saying that I put something in his service record that didn't belong. So it just brought a new level of stress and problems to our careers, but we worked through it. The years of our career, they were long, but they went by quickly. We made a lot of great friends. And honestly, I shouldn't call them friends. They're family. Our military family. We are blessed to have had our marriage survive all those years in the military, because quite honestly, the divorce rate in the military is well over 50%. But we we are doubly blessed to be able to call all the veterans brothers and sisters. Every veteran out here, you are my brother or you are my sister, and I love you all. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your service from my era and his, and we all owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you.
Well, what do you think, folks? That's a woman's point of view, and that's pretty intense. Now, I know all you women out there are clapping. You guys can clap too. That's okay. Terry, how bad was it? You survived. You've been through worse, I know.